everyone, welcome to this video. This is not my normal intro. I don't know why I started it like this. Hi everyone. So this video is going to be a little bit different than anything I've tried on this channel before. We are filming the first reading vlog. Woo! So what is a reading vlog? So if you go on YouTube and you search like reading vlog, a variety of types of videos will show up. So it doesn't seem like there's a clear-cut definition of what it should be. Videos I've seen have ranged from people literally like filming themselves sitting down and reading for a couple of hours. I've seen reading vlogs where people kind of do reading-esque things. So they're not necessarily reading, but like it's them vlogging, them going to like a bookstore and a coffee shop. So it's kind of like a cozy vlog. However, I was really inspired by seeing a reading vlog. I don't know who it was by. I think I subscribed to them, but I'll put their channel up there. So that was my inspiration. So I don't know who else does it like this, but how they do reading vlogs is it's kind of like a monthly check-in, and the videos are kind of them just like vlogging about books they are reading and like their thoughts on that day. I thought I could try something like that because reading has become a really big hobby of mine in the past couple of months. As I've mentioned before on this channel, I am now work at a library, so I'm just kind of constantly reading, and so I thought it would be really fun to like share what I'm reading and like my thoughts on it, but I don't want it to take up like every single piece of content I ever make. So yeah, this video is just going to be like snippets of little vlogs throughout this month. I am filming this intro at the very beginning of this, so I don't 100% know what it's going to be. If this intro sucks, then I'll probably like record an intro after all of this is done. But yeah, I hope that makes sense. Okay, so let's get into it with the first book of this month. So today is October 3rd. I finished this book actually on October 1st, but I just really could not find the motivation to film a video, and so that might be a problem moving forward. It is I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jennette McCurdy. I've had this book on my shelf for maybe a year now. I finally got around to reading it. I was really afraid to read it, I'm not gonna lie, mainly because I'm not a nonfiction girly. I know that some people have like, you know, preferences. I find it sometimes daunting and hard to read nonfiction books. Now that I've read it, I really enjoyed it. As for like the content and kind of my thoughts on the book, I think the reason that it is so like popular, she is like a star that a lot of us like knew and grew up with. I was a big iCarly fan. When she mentions like a scene in a show, I'm like, yes, I literally watched that episode and I know exactly what you're talking about. My friends personally was like, I'm afraid the tone might be bitter. I do not think that this was written like bitterly. Like 100% believe that the title is just kind of for dramatic effect. It's really sad, it's really cool. I think the main like story focus is not even necessarily the mom. It is the mom because it's so like ingrained in everything, but it's kind of like about all of the struggles that Jennette has had. It has like the mom as like the underlying reason. Like it does talk about and brings to light how weird and badly child stars are kind of treated and exploited by like parents and the people around them, and just kind of the weird dynamics that are in Hollywood in general. It talks about like eating disorders and like body image and like unhealthy relationships and dynamics and girlhood. And yeah, like I'm sure by this point we all kind of know it was really popular, and it's like 2 years old, so I'm definitely, this is old news. As for like the writing and the technical stuff about it, I'm not like a writer, so I cannot tell you for a fact, but the tone of voice is pretty easy to read. It's very casual, witty, and like reflective, but it definitely puts you in the mood. I was also like afraid that it was just gonna be like hard to parse through, not necessarily like the subject matter, which I kind of assumed that too, but like I just thought that it might be like a cumbersome read because again, I'm not a nonfiction girly. The way that it's written is like really short, like moments in time, and it does build and it does reference back, and it does feel like a story moving forward. Like every chapter is maybe like 2 pages. Like it's really short, really quick moving. That is this update. Before I say goodbye on this part of the vlog, let us talk about the new book that I'm starting to read. Okay, so my next read is going to be this big boy. I'm actually in the middle of it. These are 4 of Jane Austen's novels. I have read Sense and Sensibility and Pride and Prejudice. The next book that is here is, which one is it? Emma. So I'm going to be reading Emma. I don't know what else to say. Well, thank you. I'll see you next check-in. Bye. Hi everyone. It is October 7th or 8th. It is October 7th, and it has been a while since I've checked in. I don't know, I thought that making this video would inspire me more to read. If I have a 3-day weekend, I am not getting out of bed, and I was only reading fan fiction and not this Jane Austen novel. And I'm not gonna lie, I have been like wondering if I chose a wrong book to try to read for the sake of making content, because I have started the novel. I officially started reading chapter 1 today. I know, yikes. I finished chapter 3 today at work. I don't have too much to say other than I am kind of biting my fingers. I forgot how slow Jane Austen novels have been for me. I have been rewatching probably Court of Fay and Flowers. I kind of mentioned this on the video that I uploaded. I'll link it somewhere down when I was talking about Dimension 20, but I've been watching A Court of Fay and Flowers to get myself in the mood for this, and I found out through them, some reason I guess I just glossed over this fact whenever I first watched it because I hadn't been reading Jane Austen then, but they mentioned how Clueless apparently is a modern retelling of Emma. It is fun because I'm a big Clueless fan, so it is a fun experience to kind of be like, oh, I kind of know what's happening. I think that actually helps. It just moves a little slowly. I feel like Jane Austen will spend a lot of time building a very important world and picture, and yet I'm still like, okay, how does this progress the plot? That's the update. I just don't want to go too long without making any of these videos, but I don't have the biggest update other than I am slowly making my way through the book. Hey everyone, it is October 11th. I am in my car real quick before I'm going to work. Quick update to my reading log. October 11th, yes, I have finally gotten through part 1 of Emma. So that's like 18 chapters in. The book itself is divided into 3 parts, and I believe each part is 18 chapters. I'm around a third into the book. Here are some of my thoughts, because I hopefully will read a little bit more before going in. So I'm going a lot slower than I want to, so ideally I'll like get through at least part 2 tonight. I think I'm just gonna have to like really keep my nose in the book. This week has been kind of crazy. Fun fact about me, with any sort of book that I like don't comprehend completely, I always read the Spark Notes. I like reading Spark Notes because it does give me like an insight on any social context that I might be missing, you know, now reading it a couple of centuries later. I see that like we kind of agree upon that Emma is like a dislikable but likable character, and whenever I compare it to Clueless, I obviously was like, okay, I'm kind of ready for it. But I guess in my mind I didn't comprehend like how significant it is. Clueless, it's like, okay, Cher's playing around with like high school dating, and it's like, that's not serious. But whenever you go to the actual book and you like think about this time period, I'm like, marriage for like a woman is like so significant. Like, why? Like, it makes you a little bit more upset. So I do feel like I'm having like harder feelings towards Emma. I do enjoy the writing in this one because it feels more like omnipresent. So in previous Jane Austen books that I've read, it will only like focus on the experiences of the like main like heroine, which it still does, but it's really cool to see like interactions and scenes that don't involve Emma. Like when you get scenes that are just between like, I can't remember, like Mrs. Weston and like Mr. Knightley, right? Like Emma's not even there, and of course it's about Emma, but it's really cool to like actually see things happening without Emma having to be present. Hi everyone, so this isn't actually me driving update because I'm actually driving. It is October 11th, 12th. I probably should have checked the date before I started this. It's October 12th and I have officially finished the second part of Emma. Here's some of my thoughts on Emma. So far, I feel like there's no character that I really like, and I think that's the point of it. Austen is like poking fun at different like types of people by really enhancing those characteristics and all the different characters that we see. I understand that. I think the second part was a lot harder to get through than the first, because like the first part of the book, it feels like a very self-contained story, like continually feels like it's moving. This whole second part, it is so long. Okay, so it is October 13th and I am very happy to announce that I finally finished Emma. I did write down notes. These are kind of my final thoughts over like the part 3 of the book, and also just kind of the book in general that maybe I haven't really articulated before on this vlog. In this like third part of the book, things actually started happening, but it does kind of feel like a lot happened in part 1 and also part 3. Part 2 seems like so slow. I saw in the spark notes, it like described kind of part 2 as slow accumulation of details that require interpretation, and I think that is very accurate. I also want to like mention the age thing, and I also of course am going into this knowing like this is a different time, used to different things. I've read a lot of her other novels. I understand that there are age gaps, there are weird kind of incesty vibes, kind of always. I know that this is more typical for the time period, there to be big age gaps. It was nice that I'm like, okay, she's 21, props for that. But what kept on making it weird is I feel like they kept on talking about the age like all the time. He said something at the very end, he was like, I fell in love with you when you were like 13. And I was like, hey there. I also wrote down boo Miss Elton. I feel like that's self-explanatory. I kind of really like Frank. Yeah, like I feel like he's just so unserious and I really like that. I also wrote down that I think Mr. Knightley is better than Mr. Darcy. I know that Pride and Prejudice is like this cultural phenomenon of like a love story, and I feel like I've heard like the term like Mr. Darcy like thrown out like constantly. After reading Emma, I'm like, I don't know why it's a Mr. Darcy and not Mr. Knightley. Pride and Prejudice does read more like a classic love story. I like Mr. Knightley more than Mr. Darcy, and I understand that like Mr. Darcy is supposed to be like subtly like really cute and romantic, but I feel like we just had more of Mr. Knightley. And I think he was funny. Like it was really cool to actually hear Mr. Knightley speak. And I feel like Mr. Darcy is kind of just like a shadow that was in the book. So it would be a lot better, and I'd give him a lot more credit if he did not keep on mentioning the 16-year age gap and how he watched Emma grow up. That's weird. Okay, so maybe Mr. Darcy does win this one. I've changed my mind. I also really liked reading the ending and seeing kind of all the loose ends get wrapped up. I feel like that's something I was kind of lacking in all the previous novels that I read by Jane Austen. On this end, we got like maybe a 4-chapter like epilogue, while in the other books it was like all packed into like one paragraph of what happened after the love confession. And also I think the biggest thing that I took away from this whole book that I really liked is that there are no heroes, but there are also no villains. I think that's the big takeaway of the book for me. No heroes, no villains. I feel like all the characters in the book have their faults, and they're supposed to have their faults, right? They're supposed to be like kind of a caricature of a bad habit or like things that, you know, Austen probably saw in society at that time. Yeah, now we are going to shift into another section of this vlog that I think would make sense. I have a library haul. Woo! I will probably make a video on this, but I got all of the issues of My Love Mix-Up. I like reading manga, I like reading romance. I think this is kind of like BL-y, but I don't know how much actually. So yeah, I'll probably take like a break and start reading these. So these are my like a haul of what I actually bought. I recently bought all of the Nightwing issues, current running Nightwing arc by Tom Taylor and Bruno Redondo. I actually have read the first 2 volumes, but I wanted to read more, and then I was thinking about it more, and I'm like, Malia, I should really own these issues, just because like I read a lot of comic books, and I'm more than happy to read comic books online or through the library. Like, I'm fine without owning comic books because they're kind of like cumbersome to keep up with and like buy them all. However, if you know me, which I don't expect you guys to because I don't really talk about it that much, but I'm a really big, one, I'm a really big comic book fan, but 2, I'm a really big Nightwing fan. Fun fact, my first fan like account ever was a Tumblr account. Actually, I think I started on Instagram first. I think I had a fan Instagram and a fan Tumblr, but I don't know which one was first of Nightwing. So it was a completely like Nightwing blog, and I think I might still have it. I just don't know what the logins are. And I love this run so much. I don't want to talk about it like too much because you guys probably are not in here for like comic book. This is not a comic book vlog, this is a book vlog. But I've reread the first and second volume so far, and I just really love the run that's going on with Tom Taylor. Thank you, Tom Taylor. I tend to read comic books and manga like intermittently throughout reading a novel. Yeah, I think I might read these today, or at least start on it, and I'll probably make a video separate on this channel once I finish consuming it, because it seems like something I would make a video about. Bye! Hi everyone! It is October 15th. I'm still in this in-between phase of finishing Emma and like deciding on another book, but I did want to give a little reading update. Today I read 12th grade night. I read this because I did not bring a book to my library shift, and it was like relatively boring shift. I'm gonna put my camera down right there. So yeah, it's like a graphic novel. There's not too much to say. It's a relatively easy read, not necessarily saying that as like a bad thing, but I was able to read it, you know, over the course of like an hour. Apparently it is like basically like a modern retelling of Twelfth Night by Shakespeare. I also have thought longer about what I'm reading next, and I think I need like a really easy quick read. So I'm going to finally read The Nanny. What am I trying to say? It's not going to take like a lot of brain power, and it's not going to be like that like hard to decipher what's saying. I don't think this is going to be like an emotionally heavy story. Like, I think this might just be like a nice little fun fluff piece, for lack of a better word. Not in a derogatory way, but kind of in a good way of being like, I don't think I'm going to like have to be like, what are they saying, or like feel stressed or anything. So yes, that is the goal. We'll see how much of anything I do today, because it is 6 p.m. and I'm just now getting home from eating lunch because the world sucks. Okay. Hi everyone. This is hopefully the last little update I will have in this video. It is October 29th. I know, very late. I was hoping to have this up on Monday. I am recording this after that Monday. So we'll see how we go. Let's start with the first book. So it has been a hot moment since I've checked in with you guys, but I've done a lot of reading since then. So this is kind of just going to be a quick like afterthoughts. I think I checked in with you guys when I started reading The Nanny. I thought I was gonna get through it pretty quickly, not gonna lie, but I really did not want to read it. I got like halfway through the book on the first day, and I truly was going through like, yeah, I'm gonna finish this. Like, that was my only goal, was to get through it. But then I didn't finish it that day, and then I did not want to pick the book up for so long. Like, in the nicest way possible, like a bad book. It's a pretty bad book. Of course, this is my personal preference, so this might be right up your alley. And I didn't think like I would hate it this much. Like, don't get me wrong, I didn't think I expected like a lot out of it. I just didn't expect me to like not want to pick it up. It's been a hot moment. It's been like a full week since I've read it, so I did make some bullet point notes. First thing that says on this list is so hard to want to read. Like, I just did not want to visit the story. Nothing about it was like that interesting to me. I did not really care for it or for what was happening. I said that the conflict was not built good and was annoying. So like the main conflict of this book is like basically identity porn. That's the best AO3 equivalent tag that I can come up with, and I personally love that tag. I love like identity shenanigans of like, oh, you were talking but you didn't know before. But like, this is 400 words and it takes up all 400 words, and it wasn't like that interesting. It didn't like lead to anything. Like, there was nothing that like made me want to care for it. I don't know if that makes sense, and I can't really put my finger on it. Conflict itself was not that like engaging. I wasn't like, oh, what's gonna happen? It's like, we all know what's gonna happen. It felt like it was dragged out for a little bit too long, and like, you know what I mean? Like, it wasn't good enough. It wasn't solid enough to take up the whole book, and yet somehow it did. That's kind of like what I'm thinking. I also wrote down that it was too much porn. I don't know if I'm gonna get demonetized. I'm not monetized, so I guess it doesn't matter. But I don't know if I'm gonna get shadow banned or something on YouTube. This book was like way too smutty. First thing, they had no chemistry other than physical. And I personally hate that. Like, that, again, you can have your own preferences, but like, if there's no like emotion behind it, then I don't care. Like, I don't have anything against smut. And I've definitely read like books that have a lot of smut or like use the porn as plot, but it didn't do that. Like, it felt like two separate things, and like they would like bang all the time, and then all of a sudden they're like, and I love them, and I'm like, but how? Like, literally you've had no interaction. The second, which is probably the worst crime, is that the smut was like badly written. Like, I got so bored every time that they interacted, which was like every chapter. Swear to God, like once they actually hooked up initially, every single chapter, half of it was a smut scene, and it was badly written. I would check out of it. I'm like, this is not hot. I also wrote the note, if I hear a nipple one more time, this is where it gets like 18 plus, and I did not mean for it to, but like, I'm not here to kink shame. If you are really into that, then you are really into that. However, they are really into that, and I really did not like it. I had to text my boyfriend while reading this because I'm like, hey, can you like take a shot every time they say nipple or they reference nipple, or they called it a teat once. I don't think they said teat. They said like peak or something. It was something weird. Like that's part of their dirty talk, and like every moment they mention nipple. Like, that's the first thing that they always mention every time anything started. Like, it's like, touch your nipples, and it's like, oh my God, do anything else. And like, again, not here to kink shame, but like, again, they have smut every chapter. So when every chapter starts out with like, your nipples, like, oh my God, chill. Like, I cannot get, like, I do not know how to put in words how much they talk about nipples, and it's weird. It's weird. Can I be on like one-on-one? Like, it's so weird. Oh, also, I didn't like the character's character flaws. I think the main character was a little bit annoying. So yeah, that's my review of The Nanny. I got it 50% off, so I'm not being mad, but this is probably one that I'm going to like donate or do something with. I'm hoping at the end of the year to clean out my bookshelf. The other book that I read was The Catcher in the Rye. Again, I'm still on this like crusade to try to like, as I'm reading modern books, I also do want to try to like catch up on the classics or ones that I feel like people should know or they teach in school. I don't know why I'm doing quotation marks, and I really want my cat's litter box to shut up. Anyways, this is The Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger. So I have a little bit of a story about this book before we get into it, because me and this book have history. I've had this book on my shelf for probably like, I want to say like at least 5 or 6 years now. And the reason I have this book is because of K-pop. So I've talked about this on this channel before probably, but I was really into GOT7 as well as JJP, what is it called? JJ Project. Whoa, it's been so long. I'm losing my roots. But anyways, I was really into JJP, and they have a song or like a comeback, and their main song with it was Tomorrow Today. Really recommend listening to it if you want. But basically for me, it was like perfect because I was in teenage angst mode, and I guess I still am, but I was like actively going through it with like college applications and like graduating, so I just felt like I was in it a little bit more. But a book they featured heavily in that music video was The Catcher in the Rye, so I loved the song. I love like the lyrics to it. If you read, you know, the lyrics, because I don't speak Korean, but it's very like about making the right choice and like moving forward and feeling like that decision paralysis almost. So I thought like, well, if the song's that good and I really like the message of the song, then if they were talking about this book all the time, then maybe they have like a similar vibe, like maybe I would like it. I got this book, again, I was like maybe 17, started it, hated the book, could not finish, and it's been sitting on my shelf for, you know, 6 years now. And I've always wanted to read it, like just to say that I've read it, because one, I already owned it, two, I like want to be pretentious and talk about all the books that I've read that people are like, you need to read these. I've never personally been recommended The Catcher in the Rye, but it's definitely one that I've like heard about a lot. First, I want to say that I got way further in to the book the first time I read it than I thought I did. I thought I only read like the first like chapter or two, but I think I actively was like read up to chapter 10, and there's like 26 chapters. So I got pretty far into the book before I started realizing I got into like new territory. But anyways, The Catcher in the Rye, I still kind of hold my opinion that I first had. Like, I do think it's kind of a hard read. I do think that I don't enjoy the main character. However, I think I finally got, like, I finally understand like what the book is about, what it's saying, and I can understand why people like the book. However, I personally still don't really like the book. Again, I understand the message of the book, and I appreciate the message of the book. I appreciate the themes, I appreciate what they're trying to do, and I definitely can see why it's really like good and why it, you know, was so effective, but it's still not for me. So let me read again. I have post-it notes, and I wrote down some of my thoughts. The first thing that I wrote down was that it like reminded me that I have autonomy, but there's some sort of like manic energy about the book. It has this character, Holden Caulfield, I think that's his name. Basically, it's like takes place within like maybe 2-3 days at most, but it's like the short amount of time, and he like just kind of chooses to go and do things. I also wrote down like time period, like I know that that probably had something to do with it. Like maybe this was more typical behavior in this time where people could just feel like they had more freedom and autonomy, but like, I don't know. My next note that I wrote down was that it's very man, but he's not like the scummiest. I definitely get like written man male lead, which I don't think is necessarily bad, but it is a thing that, like, I'll admit that, you know, I don't have as much relatability to it as some others. Like, again, there are things that he is doing or ways that he is behaving that like I just personally can't relate to, and I think it probably has to do with like societal norms. There are things that he is doing that like is acceptable enough. Like, he's still like not doing things that are that socially acceptable, but they're like definitely more acceptable for him to do than like if it was a girl, you know what I mean? And there were just experiences that I don't feel like I could necessarily relate to. Another thing that I said man, but not the scummiest, he's like a reluctant feminist. I think he hates both men and women, but he'll say something like super gender stereotyped, but like at the same time he's like, I'm sorry for women because they have to marry men. So like my next note was that I get the teen rebellion for the time period, like for sure. Like I definitely can understand how teenagers or like young adults can definitely read this and go, yes, these are all things that are happening around me and I like don't like it. However, I will say that the voice for me is kind of hard to read. It's written in first person and it's very informal. He'll like repeat things, very like inner monologue, and even when he's talking to people, I don't really like the way it's worded. I don't like the way he speaks. Like the voice is just really hard for me to read, both for understanding, but mainly for like just enjoying the main character. Like it personally makes me frustrated. I put boo rich people. Here's the thing. A big thing about this book is that it's trying to like point out things that happen in society and like calls a lot of people like phonies in the sense that like they're corrupted or they're fake. Something that like gets me mad is that he'll like make comments on like, for example, wealth, right? Like the perception of like the rich versus the poor and like how that interacts and stuff like that. And he'll make some good points. These are all things that I'm like, yeah, Holden, you're right. Like this is dumb. But then I can't respect him enough because like he's actively like rich and like I'm like, girl, you go to like private school. So yeah, that goes to my next point. I wrote down not bad social commentary, but I don't like the main guy. I think they have good points, but I just feel like anytime a good point was made, it got canceled out by like something that he says or does next. My next point also goes with why I just don't really like the main character, is never once self-critical of himself. Again, I know that like that's part of it. Classic for a reason. I read so many other like reviews about it and some people love that about him. They feel it endearing, they feel like it's relatable. I don't. I feel like there was also like some crazy plot points at the end that like I didn't feel like necessarily got wrapped up or was necessarily necessary. Like again, I've read the spark notes. I'm trying to understand like what it's implying, what it might mean, but I still feel like there are some things that happen at the end that I don't necessarily think need to happen or like weren't really explained ever. So I did start feeling bad for him, but I think what like doesn't help is that he doesn't really change. Like there's no action, like all of these things are happening to him and like me as a reader, I'm like reading this and I'm like, oh, I'm taking the information and like processing what this must mean, what this must represent, but like main character wise, he does not like progress. I've recently read The Bell Jar and I rated it like on my Goodreads, not my Goodreads, I use Storygraph. On my Storygraph, I rated it 5 stars, and this one I think I rated 3 stars, and I kind of wanted to just like briefly talk about like why I think there might be some discrepancies. These books are relatively similar. I've heard them be compared a lot. I've also heard that like The Bell Jar was pretty inspired by this book as well, which I definitely can see the influence. I definitely see the similarities. I think for me, like at the end of the day, the reason I think I like The Bell Jar more than this is that like probably does come down towards like a very male-centric experience versus a female experience, and I'm not trying to like make it a big like thing or gender roles, but I feel like we'd be remiss to like not acknowledge that like some of the classic like coming of age things that like happens to like boys and like what they go through is different than like what happens with girls. For example, both of the books like really focus on sex a lot, but like I can relate a lot more towards like the Bell Jar experience when it revolves around sex versus like his experience. So yeah, that's basically it. I've talked really long. This video might be really long. I'm gonna literally go and edit this video right now. So yeah, thanks for tuning in. Hopefully see you guys next week with other videos on my channel. But not only next week, well, there might be a different video. I'm hoping to do this monthly, so hoping to do this again for November. So thank you. Feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. All of the numbers mean a lot to me, okay? So I definitely always have my eye out. And yeah, see you next time. Or maybe not. Bye.